Hi, I'm Kathy Zip with Craft Brewing Business. Welcome to another edition of CBB on the Scene. I'm here in Cleveland, Ohio at Fathead's Beer Hall, and I'm talking to Joe Sherwood. He is the lead cellarman for Fathead, so thanks so much for being here, Joe.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So again, most important question first, what are we drinking?
So today we're drinking Headhunter. It's our flagship IPA. It's our most popular beer by far. It's the reason we're around. It's people think of Headhunter when they think of Fatheads.
So tell me a little bit about the flavor profile, especially from a brewer's perspective.
Sure. Like most IPA, any IPA, it's hop forward. That's kind of the whole point of it. It's got a lot of tropical fruit, passion fruit, citrus, grapefruit, a little bit of pine in there at the very end.
I definitely taste the grapefruit.
Yeah,
it's got that little
grapefruit
bite
I think
in
is probably the predominant one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love grapefruit, so this is a good one with me.
Nice and dry, not too sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Good stuff. So I'm really curious to hear about your background. How did you get to be where you are now?
It's funny. I actually did not go to school for anything related to beer. I was a history and political science major and started homebrewing in my spare time, got out of college, was like, maybe I could do this as a profession instead. And so I started out as a night shift guy who opened up the Pumpkin for our seasonal beers and kind of worked my way up from there.
Okay, at Fathead. So you started
Yes, I started at Fathead.
You literally
about
started
5 years
from the
ago.
bottom and,
Yep.
and you worked your way up.
Yep.
So that's a relevant question for anyone who wants to be lead cellarman. How would you describe your role as lead cellarman, and what can people do to follow in your footsteps to get to a position like that?
Sure. So a lead cellarman obviously runs the cellar department. Most people don't know what that is. I explain it as the beer is brewed on one day and packaged on one day, and everything in between kind of happens in the cellar. So it's transferring beer, you work with the lab to monitor fermentation, quality control, that kind of thing, getting the beer cleared up and carbonated for packaging, things like that. So it's kind of the bulk of the life at the brewery is in the cellar, and then it's sent out to packaging and shipped out. If you want to get into it, honestly, the easiest way is to just get a job in the cellar or at any brewery and start working. We're at a point now where there are
Like
college
schools,
programs,
yeah.
schools that are doing things like that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still very much on the job kind of learning.
You learn
experience.
more through experience than anything else. Okay.
Absolutely.
So what would be the best and most challenging parts of your job?
Best parts are you get to watch the beer change over the course of a month or 2 weeks or however long the life of the beer is in a way that most people don't get to. You can see it did not taste like this yesterday, it tastes like this now, and it really does go through a lot of changes. Most challenging is keeping up with the schedules that you have to follow to be a business. It can't just sit around forever and watch it change. You have to hit your deadlines.
You have to know when it's time
when
to
it's
put
ready,
it out.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So how would you define the selection of beer that Fatheads offers? I know a lot of it is German influenced, and how would you kind of explain Fatheads' brewing philosophy?
Actually, German's interesting. Most people think of us as a hoppy brewery, which we certainly are. That's what we've won most of our medals for. But our German beers and our Belgian beers are honestly some of my favorites that we have to offer. And particularly now at this new facility, we've been investing a lot in innovation to try and mimic, if not improve upon old German styles of brewing. And so it's kind of taking that tradition and bringing it into the new age, as I would say, is our philosophy.
And another thing you have to think about, Fatheads has been around for a while. Has its core group of craft drinkers that really like a lot of your existing beers. So how do you really keep them happy and maintain that selection of beers while also offering fresh new choices as well?
That's a good question. We have a whole pilot system here now. So we have the big brewery that's making the beer for everybody, but then just on the other side of this wall, we have a smaller, just 15-barrel system that's for new styles, new recipes, new techniques, where we can trial them before we bring them out to them. So if you come to our tap house, you can try all these new experimental beers before we bring them out to the big market.
Do you aim for a certain number? Do you kind of try to release a new one in every few months, or how much?
Sales does try to bring in new seasonals in the rotation to keep things fresh, sure, but it's really more about when it meets our quality standards. Is it ready to go to the market or is it not? Matt, our head brewer, is a very quality-driven guy, so if it's not about what number you have to hit, it's about what you have to offer.
Well said. So kind of walk us through the brewing equipment that you have in use, the sizes, brands, if you can share that. And I know that you're in this new beer hall, so you got new equipment. were you using a lot of things you used before, or how has that changed or evolved?
Our baseline program is the same. We know how to make clean, quality beer, but what we, like I mentioned earlier, we're kind of starting to invest in new technologies where we can take what we were doing to the next level. Like just to name a few, we're doing open fermentation now, which is kind of out there for some American breweries, and then float tank, which is a German method that we are kind of, again, trying to revamp. And so our lagers have really improved from the use of the float tank. So there is some new technologies that's driving what was already good beer better, in my opinion.
Has anything changed layout-wise? Is that a key?
It's everything's more spread out now. So there's a lot more process piping, long distances. We've all kind of had to learn the computer side of brewing now with a lot more automation. So that's been kind of a learning curve, but it hasn't been too bad. It's straightforward.
Have you experienced any challenges with trying to scale up on recipes?
Yeah, I mean, that's the name of the game, is trying to scale. Even when you're going from a small brew pub to a mid-sized brewery, you have to scale up. And so it took us a few batches to figure it out, but honestly, it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Excellent. So you made a big jump in capacity with the added locations. How many more beers are you working on at one time? And then how much of it are you currently using of your capacity or equipment?
So about 40% of our capacity, give or take, actually goes towards Headhunter, our flagship, just trying to meet demand for that. So that does take up a large amount of capacity. Beyond that, we're always trying new experimental beers on the pilot system and bringing them over. Most recently, we did try our Goggle Fogger, which has always been a pub favorite, into large open fermentation batches, which would be more in style with a traditional German method. And that's been awesome. So we're hoping to kind of bring that to market in the packaging format soon.
Very exciting. So how much, you kind of addressed this, or how much the capacity is dedicated to your core, your flagship beer, but also other core year-round brands, and then how much do you dedicate to seasonal or experimental beers?
Sure. So like I said, Headhunter accounts for about 40% of it. Beyond that, Bumbleberry, especially in warm weather months, can definitely eat up a large amount of that's left over. As for seasonal capacity, it's kind of like the big bulge that comes down the pipeline. We have to kind of move everything very quickly to get it to fit in. So it's just kind of a sprint to get through that part more than it takes up a percentage.
Do you do any contract brewing at all? Or it's all exclusively
anything that we brew
Fatheads?
here is for us. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So here's a fun one. What's your favorite Fatheads beer and why?
That's a great question. It does change with the seasons. I'm a big lager drinker, and so our Starlight Lager, our old Jackstraw Pilsner, those are some of my favorites. If you want to get outside of that, I think Pit My Sleigh in the winter. We have a Belgian style Christmas ale that's phenomenal. It really is.
So how does the food that Fatheads offers affect the beer, and then the beer vice versa? So I know that Matt, your head brewer, is really big on smoked meats and things like that.
Yeah.
Has that affected the beer that you brew at all, or do you try to keep those in line, or are they kind of two separate things?
It's a great question. Something I don't have a ton of experience in. Beer pairings are a part of the industry. Everybody has beer pairing parties and things like that. I do feel like most of our beers have a nice edge to them that would help cut the richness of a smoked meat. So I think in that way it's kind of a give and take. But beyond that, if it tastes good without food, why would it not taste good with food?
Absolutely. I like that. I like that mentality. So last question. There's been a ton of craft beers that have really come to fruition, and breweries opening all the time. I feel like every other week there's something new coming in Cleveland, while Fatheads has really been here for a long time. So how do you kind of see where like Fatheads fits in to the craft brewing scene in Cleveland? Has that kind of challenged what you do and what you release, or has it kind of maybe also helped get more people interested in craft beer?
Definitely the latter part that you said. We get a lot of people that are not in the industry coming to try and work for us and learn the craft, which is awesome to inspire people that way. Fatheads, like you said, has been around for a while, so they kind of helped bring this whole West Coast IPA thing to Ohio. And I think our goal is to keep staying out front of that. Okay, that was the one thing that we brought. What can we bring next? What can we, ride the next wave on? So it's trying to, be innovative and stay on top of styles and what do people want to drink and what do they not know they want to drink,
Absolutely. Well, it's it's fun from a consumer perspective to get to see what you're doing in relation to the rest of the market and even outside of Cleveland. So thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Yeah.
You can watch more CBB on the scene at craftbrewingbusiness.com. And thanks so much, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.